Every Christmas night, one human girl is sacrificed to the vampires. She was chosen by the bells. He was meant to kill her by midnight. But no one ever warned them. The vampire king would fall in love. This is not a love story meant to survive Christmas. Before we dive into this story, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more thrilling stories like this one. Let's begin. Snow fell gently on the small town of Hollowbrook, covering rooftops, streets, and pine trees in white. Christmas lights glowed softly from every window. Red and gold decorations hung from doors. The air smelled of pine, firewood, and fresh bread. It was Christmas Eve. Inside St. Mary's Church, people gathered for the evening service. Families sat close together, whispering softly. Children held candles, their eyes bright with excitement. A large Christmas tree stood near the altar, decorated with silver stars and white ribbons. Eliza Moore sat beside her father on the third bench from the front. She was 19 years old, with soft brown eyes and dark hair tied neatly behind her head. She wore a simple red coat and gloves her mother had knitted years ago. Eliza loved Christmas more than any other day of the year. It was the one night when the world felt kind. She leaned closer to her father and smiled. "Papa," she whispered, "after church, can we stop by Mrs. Green's bakery? She promised extra cinnamon rolls tonight." Her father, Thomas Moore, chuckled quietly. "If they're not all gone already," he said. "The whole town will be there." Eliza laughed softly. At the front of the church, Father James raised his hands. "Let us begin," he said calmly. The choir started to sing Silent Night. Their voices filled the church, gentle and warm. Eliza closed her eyes and sang along quietly. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. The bell rang. It was supposed to ring once at the end of the song. But this bell sounded wrong. The sound was deep, heavy, low. Everyone stopped singing. People looked around, confused. Father James frowned. "That's strange," he muttered. The second ring echoed through the church walls. The candles flickered. A cold wind moved through the room, though all the doors were closed. Eliza felt a sudden chill run through her body. "Papa," she whispered, gripping her father's sleeve. "Do you feel that?" Thomas nodded slowly. "Yes." The third ring was louder than the others. Some people gasped. Baby began to cry. Father James turned toward the altar and froze. A dark red stain was spreading across the white cloth. Gasps filled the church. "That's blood," someone whispered. The stain moved on its own, forming letters. Eliza's heart started to beat fast. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." The letters finished forming a name. Eliza Moore. Silence fell over the church. Eliza stood up suddenly, her legs shaking. "No," she said louder now. "This is not funny. This is not funny." Her father stood too. "She's just a girl," Thomas shouted. "This is a mistake." Father James stepped back, his face pale. "It has never been wrong before," he said quietly. Eliza's chest felt tight. She could barely breathe. People began to whisper. "It's her. The sacrifice. It's Christmas night." Eliza turned around, her eyes wide. "What are they talking about?" she asked. "Papa, what are they saying?" Thomas swallowed hard. His hands trembled. "Eliza," he said slowly, "there are old stories." "What stories?" she cried. Before he could answer, the church doors creaked open. A cold wind rushed in, blowing out several candles. Four figures stood at the entrance, wearing long black coats trimmed with dark red fur. Their faces were pale. Their eyes glowed faintly red. The town guard stepped back in fear. One of the figures stepped forward. He was tall, with silver hair and sharp eyes. "By ancient law," the man said calmly, "the girl has been chosen." "No," Thomas shouted, moving in front of Eliza. "You will not take her." The man looked at him without emotion. "She belongs to the king now." Eliza clutched her father's coat. "I don't understand," she said, her voice shaking. What king? The man turned his gaze to her. The vampire king, he answered. Gasps echoed through the church. Thomas fell to his knees. Please, he begged. Take me instead. The man shook his head. It must be her. Eliza felt tears run down her face. Papa, she whispered. The men moved forward. Thomas tried to fight, but strong hands held him back. Eliza screamed as she was pulled away. I love you, Thomas cried. I love you, Eliza. She reached for him, but they dragged her toward the door. The bells rang one last time. As Eliza was taken into the snowy night, the Christmas lights of Hollowbrook blurred through her tears. Christmas Eve had chosen her. Eliza sat inside a black carriage, wrapped in a thick cloak that was not hers. The inside smelled of cold stone and something metallic. The sound of hooves echoed against the frozen road. She hugged herself tightly, trying to stop shaking. Across from her sat one of the men who had taken her from the church. He stared straight ahead, silent as stone. Where are you taking me? Eliza asked softly. No answer. He tried again. Please, just tell me. The man finally spoke, his voice low. To Knockturn Vale. Snow fell harder as the carriage moved deeper into the forest. Tall trees blocked out the moonlight. Red lanterns hung from branches, glowing faintly like eyes watching her. Eliza swallowed. Am I going to die? She asked. The man hesitated. That depends, he said. Her heart sank. The carriage stopped. The door opened and cold air rushed in. Come, the man said. Eliza stepped down into the snow. Her boots sank into the white ground. She looked up and froze. Before her stood a massive iron gate, covered in black vines. Beyond it rose a castle carved from dark stone. Tall towers reached into the sky. Snow rested on sharp edges like frozen blood. This is Knockturn Vale, the man said. The gates opened slowly. As Eliza walked inside, she felt thousands of eyes on her, though she saw no one. They led her through long halls lit by candles. The walls were covered with paintings of pale kings and queens, all with red eyes. Finally they stopped before two tall doors. One of the guards knocked once. The doors opened. Eliza stepped inside. The room was vast, with a high ceiling and a giant window showing falling snow. A long table stood in the center, decorated for Christmas with dark roses and silver ornaments. At the far end of the room stood a man. He wore a black coat trimmed with red, his posture straight and powerful. His skin was pale, almost glowing. His hair was dark and his eyes were deep red. This was King Lucian Blackthorn. Eliza's breath caught in her throat. The guards knelt. My king, one said. The chosen girl. Lucian looked at her. For a long moment he said nothing. Eliza felt exposed, like he could see her heart beating. Finally he spoke. Leave us. The guards hesitated. My king. I said leave, Lucian repeated. His voice calm but commanding. They bowed and exited. The doors closed. Silence filled the room. Lucian walked closer. Each step echoed. Eliza's hands trembled. You're afraid, Lucian said quietly. She nodded. Yes. That is reasonable, he replied. She swallowed. Are you going to kill me? Lucian stopped in front of her. No, he said. Eliza looked up shocked. No, she repeated. Not yet, he added. Her heart raced. Why am I here? She asked. Lucian studied her face, her eyes, the way she held herself. You are the Christmas offering, he said. Given to me so my people may survive. She shook her head. I don't understand. I've done nothing wrong. I know, he said softly. That surprised her. You know, she asked. Lucian turned away, his hands clenched. For 400 years, he said. This has been the way. He faced her again. But you, he paused. You are different. Eliza frowned. I'm just a baker's daughter. Lucian looked at her heartbeat. Listening. No, he said. You are something else. Snow continued to fall outside the window. Somewhere far away, Christmas bells rang. And for the first time in centuries, the Vampire King felt fear. Eliza stood in the great hall, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The room felt cold, even with the many candles burning along the walls. Shadows moved with the flames, stretching and shrinking like living things. King Lucian Blackthorn remained silent. He stood only a few steps away from her, yet it felt like a great distance separated them. Eliza could hear her own heartbeat loud in her ears. She wondered if he could hear it too. "Why are you staring at me like that?" she finally asked, her voice shaking. Lucian blinked, as if waking from a deep thought. "I am listening," he said quietly. "Listening to what?" "To your heart." Eliza's face grew warm. "That's strange," she said. "You're strange." For a brief moment, something like surprise crossed Lucian's face. Then very faintly, his lips curved almost like a smile. "Almost. No one has spoken to me like that in centuries," he said. Eliza took a slow breath. "I'm sorry. I'm just scared." "That too I hear clearly," Lucian replied. He turned and walked toward a long table covered with dark red cloth. On it stood a silver goblet, filled with thick crimson liquid. Eliza's stomach twisted. "That's blood," she whispered. "Yes," Lucian said. He picked up the goblet, holding it loosely in his hand. "By tradition," he explained, "I am to drink from the chosen girl upon her arrival. A single taste binds her fate to mine until midnight." Eliza's hands trembled. "You mean my blood?" "Yes." She swallowed hard. "And if you do?" Lucian looked at her again. "Then you will not leave this castle alive." The truth hit her like a sharp wind. "Then why are you waiting?" she asked quietly. "Why don't you just do it and be done?" Lucian's grip tightened around the goblet. The metal creaked softly. "Because when I listen to your heart," he said, his voice low, "it does not sound like the others." Eliza frowned. "Others? Fear usually screams," Lucian said. "Your fear speaks gently." She thought for a moment. "I'm afraid," she admitted. "But I don't hate you." That made him turn sharply toward her. "You should," he said. "Why?" she asked. "You didn't choose this either, did you?" Lucian froze. No one had ever asked him that. A knock echoed through the hall. Before Lucian could respond, the doors opened, and several figures entered. They were pale vampires dressed in rich dark clothing. Their eyes glowed red, cold and sharp. At their front stood Lady Victoria Ashcroft. She bowed slightly. "My king." The council senses delay. Lucian straightened, his face turning cold once more. "The ritual will proceed at midnight," he said. Victoria's eyes flicked to Eliza. "The girl has not been marked." "I am aware," Lucian replied. "That is unacceptable," Victoria said calmly. "Tradition." "We'll wait," Lucian cut in. A low murmur moved through the council. Victoria stepped closer. "You risk everything." Lucian stepped forward, towering over her. "I am the risk," he said. Silence followed. Victoria bowed stiffly. "As you command." The council turned and left. Eliza exhaled, not realizing she had been holding her breath. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes, I did," Lucian answered. "For reasons I do not yet understand." He set the goblet down untouched. "For now," he said, "you are my guest." "My guest," Eliza repeated. "You will be given a room," he continued. "Food. Warm clothes." She stared at him. "Why are you being kind to me?" Lucian looked away. "Kindness," he said slowly, "is a memory I cannot escape tonight." Eliza had never seen a room like this before. The dining hall of Nocturne Vale was enormous. A long table stretched across the room, carved from black stone and polished until it shone. Above it hung chandeliers made of iron and crystal, glowing with candlelight. The hall was decorated for Christmas, But not like in Hollowbrook. Black pine trees lined the walls, decorated with silver ornaments shaped like stars, moons, and drops of glass that looked like frozen tears. Red ribbons twisted around candle stands. Snow drifted gently past tall stained glass windows. Eliza sat at the long table, her back straight, her hands folded on her lap. She wore a dark green dress provided by the castle. It was warm and soft, but it felt strange wearing something so fine. At the head of the table sat King Lucian. On either side of him sat powerful vampires, members of the Crimson Council. Lady Victoria sat close, her eyes sharp and watchful. Eliza felt like every movement she made was being judged. A servant placed a plate before her. Bread. Roasted vegetables. Real food. She looked up surprised. "You may eat," Lucian said quietly. "You don't eat?" she asked. "Not like you," he replied. She picked up a spoon, her hand shaking. Around her, vampires lifted goblets filled with dark liquid. Their eyes followed her every move. One vampire leaned toward another and whispered, "She looks too small." Eliza heard it. She swallowed and forced herself to eat. Halfway through the meal, Lucian stood. Everyone stopped moving. "Tonight is Christmas Eve," he said. "Once, long ago, this night meant hope." Some vampires shifted uncomfortably. Lucian's gaze fell on Eliza. "Let us remember that," he finished. He sat. The meal continued in tense silence. Eliza gathered her courage and spoke softly. "Do you celebrate Christmas?" she asked Lucian. Few vampires gasped. Lucian raised a hand. "Answering is my choice." He looked at her. "Once I did." She tilted her head. "What happened?" "I became what I am," he said. She nodded slowly. "I'm sorry." That word again. Sorry. Lucian felt something tighten in his chest. A servant brought a small tray and placed it before Eliza. On it sat a tiny wooden ornament, a carved star. "I asked for this," Lucian said quietly. Eliza looked at him in surprise. "You did?" "Yes." He picked it up. "It's beautiful. It is tradition among humans to exchange gifts," he said. "I wanted to understand." Her eyes filled with tears. "No one's ever given you a Christmas gift before?" she asked. Lucian shook his head. She stood slowly and walked toward him, holding the ornament. "I made something once," she said softly. "For my mother." She placed the star in his hand. "For tonight," she said. "You're not alone." The room went silent. Lucian closed his fingers around the star. For the first time in 400 years, the Vampire King felt warmth. And far above them, unseen, the curse began to stir. Eliza could not sleep. The guest room given to her was warm and quiet, with heavy curtains and a fireplace burning softly. A small Christmas wreath hung on the door, made of dark pine and silver thread. It was beautiful, but it did not feel like home. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. "Papa must be worried," she thought. "He must think I'm already dead." Soft knock came at the door. Eliza stiffened. "Come in," she said carefully. The door opened, and King Lucian stepped inside. He was no longer wearing his royal coat. Instead, he wore a simple black shirt. Without the heavy crown and symbols of power, he looked less like a monster, and more like a tired man. "I hope I did not frighten you," he said. "You didn't," Eliza replied honestly. "I was already afraid." Lucian nodded. "May I sit?" She gestured to the chair near the fireplace. "Yes." He sat, keeping a respectful distance. "I wanted to ask," Eliza said slowly, "why you sent everyone away earlier." Lucian watched the fire. "Because they would not understand." "Understand what?" "That I did not want to hurt you." She studied his face. "But you've hurt others." "Yes." The word was heavy. "Do you regret it?" she asked. Lucian looked at her, then truly looked. "Every Christmas," he said. Eliza hugged her knees. "Then why does the ritual continue?" "Because fear is easier than change," he answered. Silence settled between them. After a moment, Eliza stood and walked to a small table by the window. She picked up a tiny object wrapped in cloth. "I brought this from home," she said. Lucien frowned. "You were allowed to bring nothing." "I hid it," she said simply. She unwrapped the cloth, revealing a small handmade Christmas ornament, a red ribbon tied around a wooden bell. "I made it years ago," Eliza said. "For my mother." Lucien's chest tightened. "She passed away," Eliza added quietly. But Christmas still mattered to her. She used to say, "Christmas is about remembering love, even when it hurts." Eliza held the ornament out to him. "For you," she said. "So you remember too." Lucien did not move. "I don't deserve it," he said. "That's not how gifts work," Eliza replied gently. Slowly, Lucien reached out and took the ornament. His fingers brushed hers. A sharp pain struck his chest. He gasped, pulling his hand back. Eliza stepped forward. "Are you all right?" Lucien turned away, breathing hard. "I should leave," he said. "Why?" she asked. "Because this," he said, pressing a hand to his chest, "is dangerous." She shook her head. "You're not dangerous to me." He looked at her, pain and confusion in his eyes. "You don't know what you're saying," he whispered. "Then teach me," Eliza said. "Don't hide from me." Lucien closed his eyes. For the first time in centuries he wanted to stay. The castle slept uneasily. Wind howled outside Nocturne Vale, rattling windows and shaking old stone. Snow fell thick and heavy, as if the sky itself was restless. Lucien stood alone in the council chamber, staring at the tall stained-glass windows. They showed the story of the curse, images of a king, a girl, blood and fire. Footsteps echoed behind him. "Your Majesty," a voice said. Lucien turned. It was Marcus Hale, his closest guard and oldest friend. His eyes were serious, his jaw tight. "You should not be near the girl," Marcus said quietly. Lucien did not deny it. "Tell me." Marcus sighed. "The council is uneasy. Lady Victoria suspects something." "Let her suspect," Lucien replied. "What matters is the truth." Marcus stepped closer. "You feel it, don't you?" Lucien nodded once. Marcus's voice dropped. "Then you know what this means." Lucien clenched his fists. "Say it." "The curse was never about blood," Marcus said. "It was about love." Lucien turned sharply. "Explain." Marcus took a breath. "Long ago, the first vampire king fell in love with the Christmas sacrifice. He tried to save her. And failed," Lucien said. "Yes. The curse was created to punish him," Marcus continued. "If the king ever loves the chosen girl, the magic demands balance." Lucien's voice was barely a whisper. "What balance?" "Both must die." Silence crashed down like thunder. Lucien felt the room spin. "No," he said. "That is not possible." "It is," Marcus said gently. "That is why the ritual exists, to prevent love." Lucien thought of Eliza's smile, her kindness, the warmth he felt holding the ornament. "She already knows," Lucien said suddenly. Marcus froze. "How?" "She sees me," Lucien replied. "Not a king. Not a monster." Marcus looked away. "Then you must act before midnight." Lucien's jaw tightened. "I will not kill her." "Then she will die anyway," Marcus said. "Along with you." Lucien slammed his fist into the stone table. The sound echoed through the chamber. "There must be another way." "There is not," Marcus said softly. "At least, none written." Lucien laughed bitterly. "So the curse wins." Marcus hesitated. "Unless love itself changes it." Lucien looked up. "What do you mean?" "Curses are built on rules," Marcus said. "But rules can break." Lucien shook his head. "Hope is dangerous." "Yes," Marcus agreed. "But tonight is Christmas." Lucien closed his eyes. Elsewhere in the castle, Eliza stood by her window, holding the wooden bell ornament. She felt a strange ache in her chest, like her heart knew something terrible was coming. A tear slid down her cheek. "I won't run," she whispered to the night. No matter what. Midnight was coming. And the truth had finally been spoken. The castle of Nocturne Vale felt different as midnight drew closer. The air grew heavier. The candles burned lower, their flames shaking even though there was no wind inside the halls. Bells rang faintly in the distance, slow, deep sounds that echoed through stone and bone. Midnight was coming. Eliza walked slowly through the long corridor, her footsteps soft against the cold floor. She was no longer being guarded. The servants had disappeared. Even the whispers of the castle seemed to be holding their breath. She wore a white cloak trimmed with red thread, placed on her bed without explanation. She knew what it meant. The sacrifice, she thought. Her hands trembled, but her steps did not stop. At the end of the corridor she saw light. The grand altar hall. Inside, the room was vast and cold. A tall black iron tree stood in the center, its branches shaped like twisted thorns. Hundreds of candles hung from it, glowing like trapped stars. At its base lay a stone altar marked with ancient symbols. Snow drifted down through an open ceiling above, falling gently onto the floor like white ash. Members of the Crimson Council stood in a circle around the altar, dressed in dark robes. Lady Victoria Ashcroft stood at the front, her expression calm and merciless. "Eliza Moore," Victoria said, her voice carrying through the hall. "You are on time." Eliza lifted her chin. "I came by choice." That caused a small stir among the vampires. Victoria smiled thinly. "How noble." Eliza looked around. "Where is King Lucien?" "Oz." "He will arrive," Victoria said. "He always does." Eliza swallowed. She stepped closer to the altar. "Before this happens," Eliza said, her voice steady despite the fear pounding in her chest, "I want to say something." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Humans do not speak during the ritual." "I will," Eliza replied. The hall went silent. "I know you see me as a gift," Eliza continued, "or a tool. But I am not afraid of dying." Several vampires shifted uncomfortably. "I am afraid of dying without meaning," she said. "If my life is taken tonight, let it be known that I gave it freely." Victoria's eyes hardened. "Bravery does not change fate." "No," Eliza said softly. "But love might." At that moment the doors slammed open. King Lucien entered the hall. He wore his crown and ceremonial coat, dark as night, lined with crimson. His face was calm, but his eyes were burning. "Eliza," he said. She turned toward him. "You came," she whispered. Lucien walked toward her, ignoring the council. "Leave us," he commanded. Victoria stepped forward. "My king, the time." "I said leave," Lucien repeated, his voice echoing with power. One by one, the council backed away, retreating to the shadows. Lucien stopped in front of Eliza. "You should not be here," he said. She smiled sadly. "Neither should you." The bells rang louder. 5 minutes to midnight. Lucien clenched his jaw. "You know what this means." "Yes," Eliza said. "Marcus told me." Lucien's eyes widened. "You spoke with him." "He tried to help me escape," Eliza said. "I refused." "Why?" Lucien demanded. "Why would you stay?" Eliza reached into her cloak and pulled out the small wooden bell ornament. "Because I don't want you to be alone when it happens," she said. Lucien's breath caught. "You don't understand," he said hoarsely. "If I love you." "I know," Eliza interrupted. "We both die." Silence fell between them. Snow continued to fall. Lucien shook his head slowly. "I will not let that happen." Eliza stepped closer. "Then don't fight it alone." The bells began their final count. 3 minutes to midnight. Lucien stood before Eliza, torn between centuries of duty and a feeling he had never allowed himself to name. "I was turned into this monster on Christmas night," Lucien said quietly. I watched the world celebrate while I lost everything. Eliza listened, her eyes soft. I swore never to love again, he continued. Because love is what damned us. Eliza reached for his hand. Then let it save you too, she said. The moment their hands touched, the iron tree above them creaked. The candles flared brightly. A low rumble shook the hall. The curse felt it. Lucian pulled his hand back, breathing hard. It's starting, he said. Eliza stepped closer anyway. I've lived my whole life afraid of small things, she said. Tonight, I choose something big. Lucian looked at her, truly looked at her. Do you love me? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Eliza nodded. I think. I already do. The bells rang again. 1 minute. Lucian felt something inside him break. He cupped her face gently, as if she were made of glass. I love you, he said. The words shattered the air. The ground trembled violently. Cracks spread across the stone floor. Blood-red light poured from the symbols on the altar. Snow turned crimson as it fell. Eliza did not move. She lifted herself onto her toes and kissed him. It was soft, warm, real. For a single heartbeat, the world went silent. The curse screamed. A shockwave burst through the hall, throwing candles to the floor. The iron tree groaned as dark energy wrapped around Lucian and Eliza like chains. Lucian cried out in pain, dropping to his knees. Eliza, he shouted. She held on to him, refusing to let go. I'm here, she said. I'm not afraid. The bells struck midnight. Everything stopped. The chains tightened. The curse had awakened fully, and it demanded its price. Pain filled the grand altar hall. The dark chains of the curse wrapped tightly around King Lucian and Eliza, lifting them slightly from the ground. The air burned cold and hot at the same time. The iron tree above them shook violently, its candles bursting one by one. Eliza gasped as her chest tightened. Lucian, she whispered. Lucian struggled to breathe. Every part of him felt like it was being torn apart. He could hear voices, ancient, angry, screaming inside his mind. You have broken the law. Love was forbidden. Both must pay. No, Lucian growled, forcing himself upright. Not her. The chains tightened. Eliza cried out, clutching his arm. It's all right, she said weakly. If this is how it ends. It is not, Lucian said fiercely. The Crimson Council rushed back into the hall. Lady Victoria stood at the front, her face pale but firm. The curse has awakened, she said loudly. Step away from her, my king. Let the ritual finish. Lucian looked at her with burning eyes. You knew, he said. You always knew. Victoria did not deny it. This is the price of our survival. Lucian laughed bitterly. Survival without love is not life. Eliza's knees buckled. Lucian caught her before she fell. Stay with me, he whispered. I am, she replied, forcing a weak smile. I'm not afraid. That broke him. Lucian turned his gaze upward, toward the swirling darkness above the iron tree. You want balance, he shouted. Then take me. The voices paused. Victoria stepped forward. My king, think carefully. Without you, there will still be a future, Lucian said. Just not one built on blood. The chains tightened around Eliza's throat. Lucian roared. He reached toward the ceremonial blade resting on the altar. The blade shook violently, resisting him. This ends tonight, Lucian said. He pressed the blade against his own chest. Eliza's eyes widened. Lucian, no. I was meant to be immortal, he said softly. That is what the curse protects. He looked at her, tears burning his eyes. But I choose to be human. He drove the blade into his heart. A blinding light exploded through the hall. The chains shattered like glass. The iron tree cracked down the middle. The symbols on the floor burned bright, then faded into ash. A scream echoed. Ancient, furious, defeated. Lucian collapsed. Eliza, she screamed, falling beside him. The Crimson Council staggered back as the dark magic tore itself apart. One by one, the vampires screamed as shadows pulled them away, their forms dissolving into smoke. Lady Victoria fell to her knees. "The curse," she whispered. "It's broken." Lucien lay still. Eliza pressed her ear to his chest. "Nothing." "No," she sobbed. "Please, you can't leave me." Soft breath. Lucien coughed. His chest rose and fell, his skin warm. "Eliza," he whispered. She laughed and cried at the same time, holding his face. "You're alive," she said. "You're alive." Lucien opened his eyes. They were no longer red. They were human. Sunlight streamed through the broken ceiling of Nocturne Vale. For the first time in centuries, the sun touched the stone walls of the castle without burning them. Snow melted softly on the floor, turning into clear water. Eliza sat beside Lucien near the remains of the iron tree. He was wrapped in a warm cloak, breathing slowly, peacefully. Marcus approached quietly. "It's over," he said. Lucien looked at him. "Is it?" Marcus nodded. "The vampires are gone. The curse died with the ritual." Lucien closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face. "I can feel it," he said. "Time. Life." Eliza squeezed his hand. "Welcome to being human." They laughed softly. By morning, Nocturne Vale began to crumble, its magic fading. Eliza and Lucien left the castle together, walking through the forest as snow fell gently around them. At the edge of Hollowbrook, bells rang again. This time they sounded normal, warm, joyful. People gathered in the town square, confused but unharmed. Thomas More stood frozen as he saw Eliza walking toward him. "Eliza," he whispered. She ran into his arms. "I'm home," she cried. Thomas held her tightly, tears streaming down his face. Lucien stood back, unsure. Eliza pulled him forward. "Papa," she said, smiling. "This is Lucien." Thomas studied him, then nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said simply. That Christmas morning, Hollowbrook celebrated like never before. They decorated a tall pine tree at the edge of the forest with handmade ornaments. Eliza placed the small wooden bell at the highest branch. Lucien watched the snow fall, feeling peace for the first time. Every Christmas after that, the town remembered the night the bells chose love instead of blood. And no girl was ever sacrificed again. If this story moved you, if you felt the fear, the love, and the sacrifice, don't let it end here. Like this video so more stories like this can find their way to you. Subscribe for dark, emotional tales where love challenges fate. And comment below. Would you have defied the curse? Or followed tradition? Until the next story. Remember, some nights even monsters choose love.